Hi, welcome to TTM Overcomers Rising, How to Live Out Your Days Victoriously. Today with me I have Lindsey, who is successful in overcoming her days with Trick. She is also a therapist right now, but she once was a patient battling skin picking and pulling out her hair. So welcome, Lindsey.
Thank
You
you.
for joining.
Thank you so
So
much
real
for
quick,
having me.
what was your first memories of Trichotillomania? How old were you?
So I was in 7th grade. I don't remember how old I was. It feels so long ago. I must be getting old. But in 7th grade, that's when I started with Trichotillomania. And I remember there were two really big things that stand out to me from when I started. The first one was, which I talk about both of these things in my book. The first one was being in a car with a substitute teacher heading to a class field trip. I think it was like going to the Performing Arts Center. And her daughter was in the car because her daughter was homeschooled and happened to be joining her that day. And actually reached over and pulled out a strand of gray hair from her mom's head as her mom was driving us in the car. And that for whatever reason that really impacted me. I saw that. I had never seen anybody like pull a strand of their hair out, let alone somebody else's. And so that's one thing that really stands out to me when I'm asked about first memories. And the other thing is that I also recall once I started pulling it, it kind of started for me. So my hair was highlighted, I guess very much how it is now. So I had darker and lighter. And I had these highlights, and I used to blow dry my hair, and I would take the front section of my hair and pull it down over my face and blow dry it to like get really nice volume afterwards. And when I would pull my hair down in front of my face, I would always scan and look for the lightest strands of hair. And now obviously my hair was highlighted, so I had some blonde parts. And I actually targeted the very lightest strands of hair and pulled those out. And so that's actually when my pulling started, was from the front, my front hairline. And so for me, it was very much a visual scan. I was looking for all of my strands of hair to look similar. But I was also paying to get my hair highlighted. So obviously my hair wasn't going to look all uniform.
Yeah.
But I started out by targeting the lightest strands of hair. And so for me, that it was very much like a visual scan, visual stimulation.
Oh, wow. So over the years, this started in 7th grade, but how long were you battling Trick for?
Yeah, so I pulled my hair from 7th grade up until the 2nd year of my master's program. So I pulled all through high school. I pulled all through college. And then I went into my first master's program in clinical counseling psychology, and I even pulled through the majority of that as well. And I remember the conference. There was a Trichotillomania Learning Center. I know it's a different name now, but the TLC conference, the annual conference that I attended, it was, I think, between the 1st and 2nd year of my master's program. And I attended that conference, and that was a very pivotal moment in my life, as far as really just feeling so much inspiration and motivation from being in a room full of individuals very, very much like myself, and of varying degrees of severity with hair pulling. And
how severe was your hair pulling? Did you pull out just scalp, or was it eyebrows, eyelashes?
Yeah, great question. So I only pulled from my scalp. I never touched my eyebrows or my eyelashes, fortunately. But my hair pulling was, it was really bad. I spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money styling my hair, spending a lot of time every morning before school styling my hair in such a way that nobody would pay attention or recognize the bald patches. I mean, I had very, very clearly defined bald patches on my scalp, some the size of nickels, some the size of quarters, some the size of $50. And my hair, which I was known for in middle school, is just like everybody loved my hair. And it was just very upsetting and unfortunate that I kind of took that gift that I was given away from myself. And obviously, you know, that's part of the disorder, is feeling a lack of control when you engage in hair pulling. So for me, it really, the hair pulling started in 7th grade. It went all through high school, college, and then in my master's program is when I finally, after attending that conference, it just really changed something in me. I totally shifted gears, and at that point, I just had the motivation and was just fed up with pulling, and really did a lot of soul searching, and just really did a lot of thinking and reflecting on my thought process and who I am and what I want to be, and came to the realization that I want to be a therapist. I want to help people that are struggling with these disorders, but, and I talk about it in my book, how can I if I'm personally still struggling? And so for me, I felt very hypocritical. I felt like I was going to be deemed a liar or a fraud if I was helping people with this disorder and I was still struggling. So I think that, in combination with just having pulled for so many years and being frustrated and dealing with always having to fix the way my hair was and just have limitations on some of the freedoms that other people don't have, that have a full head of hair. All that in culmination just really boosted my motivation and kind of made me get angry and kind of fight back.
Yeah. So over the years, as you've been battling Trick, what are some tactics that you've used? What are some things that actually have helped you to overcome?
So for me, it was a combination of things. And I want to preface this by saying, in therapy, and also with my story, I am not one to say that it's a one size fits all. So I just want to preface it by saying that what has worked for me, this is not like the answer, the magic fix, because what works for me might not work for somebody else. But for me, it was a combination of things. So it was becoming really aware. So checking in with myself a few times a day as to, what am I feeling right now? Like, what am I going through? Where am I as I am sitting in this class? What emotions am I experiencing? So doing like check-ins with myself 4 to 5 times a day and kind of bringing myself into the present moment.
Yeah.
The other thing was really working on my thought process, really working on acceptance of who I am, the good parts and the bad parts of me. Growing up a perfectionist and having treated a lot of other clients that also struggle with perfectionism as I did, I am my own worst enemy. I'm so hard on myself. I had been for so many years. And so that was a really big part of it too, is coming to this realization that, like, Lindsey, you can love yourself even though you have things that you want to continue to improve on. Even though every day is a new opportunity to make changes in your life, you still can love yourself. And so changing that thought process and really reframing how I was viewing myself and viewing myself in the world. And then the other thing was also just making lifestyle changes. So being kinder to myself included, hey, let me make sure I get enough sleep at night. Let me make sure I'm eating properly. Let me make sure I'm taking a time out, while I'm working or at the time doing homework or class assignments, to get outside and get some exercise, get some fresh air, enjoy the flowers out front of the house, enjoy the small things in life. And so there's so much more to it, but I think that's kind of like the first things that come to mind. So lifestyle changes, and then restructuring my thought process and how I viewed myself and how I viewed myself in my world. And just learning to be kind to myself and love myself, which is really hard for so many people to do. And I get it. I mean, I still am working on it every day and I still don't have it right.
Yeah. So in your book, since we're kind of on this topic, I remember reading carbs and sugar. Can you kind of elaborate on that? Because you said you had to change your eating habits, but was her name Stephanie?
Stephanie.
Yeah. So you and Stephanie actually had something in common where you guys are highly addicted to carbs and sugar, and you realized you had to cut that out because it was a trigger. So
yes, I'm so glad you brought that up. So yes, my best friend Stephanie, she became my best friend from just all of our similarities and commonalities with Trick, and we feel like we can really relate on that level. And so in the book, I talk about how she and I both have a sugar addiction, and we crave carbs and we crave sweets and junk food. I have loved desserts my entire life. I didn't realize it was a problem until later in life when I was living on my own and had complete access to eating whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. I naturally crave sugar. I naturally crave carbohydrates. I can eat unlimited amounts of desserts.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found, just again through insight and just through kind of paying attention to patterns in my hair pulling, was that I knew for a fact I was eating way too much sugar. I was eating a lot of junk food. I was eating healthy food too, but then I would just kind of go to town at night with desserts.
Yeah, which is easy to do.
Yeah, so easy to do. And so I realized that when I did that, it spiked my blood sugar levels, obviously, naturally. And then it caused a feeling of extreme discomfort in my body where I had a hard time sitting still. I was very jittery. I was very antsy. Very similar to like what we observe in children when we give them a bunch of candy and then they run around a playground and they go crazy. But as an adult, it's like you're not just going to go run around and go wild like a kid does and jump off the walls. But internally, I was feeling that way. And so the discomfort that I personally felt from consuming so much sugar and just feeling so antsy and agitated and jittery led to urges. And then I would pull as a result. So yes, I mean, I'm sure that there is something to be said about, we know elevated blood sugar levels are not good for us for a variety of reasons, from both a physical, medical standpoint and then also a mental health standpoint, just with inflammation throughout the body and inflammation in the brain. But putting all of that aside, just from as far as recognizing patterns on the surface, I knew that sugar and carbohydrates were something that I had to significantly reduce.
Yeah.
And so for a while, I cut them out altogether. And then I gradually, again, practicing compassion, practicing self-love, practicing kindness, allowed myself to start to have desserts again in moderation, because I think everything in moderation, that's the best way to go. And I also knew that I wasn't going to live a life without ever consuming a piece of candy or a bite of dessert again. So I wanted to be very realistic with myself and set a goal that was very attainable and sustainable long term. So now I do occasionally have desserts. I love sweets. I still do. That hasn't gone away. But I just am much more conscious and much more mindful of how much I'm consuming. And it's all done in self-love and compassion and knowing that I don't want to eat too much of this because I'm not going to feel well afterward.
Yeah. So you overcome your need for perfection, and then you had to overcome, you noticed carbs and sugar had to be cut out. Also in your book, you said you had a moment of surrender. So what was that about?
So the moment of surrender, I think that there are like two parts to that. The first one was surrendering to the fact that I'm never going to be perfect.
Yeah.
I was striving for that my entire life, and I put so much time and energy now looking back on trying to present a certain way to those around me and to my friends, and wanting everybody to like me and wanting to be the best at everything that I entered into, whether it was sports or something academic, and coming to the realization that like I am never going to be perfect. So surrendering to that idea of perfectionism, surrendering to that goal, and basically throwing it out and saying, this is not working for me. This is making my life so difficult. This is making my life miserable. I'm beating myself up about something that's never going to come true. And again, kind of reframing and restructuring, well, what do I do instead? I practice being perfectly imperfect. That's what I always like to say.
Yeah.
I am perfectly imperfect. I'm really good at being imperfect. And so it was surrendering to that. It was also surrendering to the fact that I sometimes was going to have urges.
Yeah.
And as we know with Trichotillomania, our urges, there's like an ebb and flow. Like some days we have strong urges, other days we don't. Sometimes we can recognize patterns. Other times we're having urges and we don't know why, and it's very frustrating. And I went through that myself for many years. So it was surrendering to the fact that sometimes I was going to have urges and that I didn't always have to act on them. So allowing urges to be present in my life and knowing that it was okay that existed, that I had that feeling, and that I didn't have to actually act upon it.
And it reminds me of, you talked about in the book, you were at a TLC conference, I believe, and a phrase, and it hit me too. It says, you're not recovered, only in recovery. And so it's kind of like always accepting you might have this weakness, and don't let your guard down like you're in the clear for your whole life, but just know you're in recovery. And can you kind of elaborate like how that helped you kind of?
Yeah, I love that. And it's true for a lot of different behaviors that people are struggling with. I mean, this is true for substance addiction. This is true for overeating. This is true for over-exercising. This is true for nail biting and skin picking as well. The fact that we go to therapy, or some people choose to go to therapy, to work on being the best version of themselves. And in order to do that, you have to make change. So by going to therapy, you are learning and practicing and hopefully implementing new skills or new tools that you're going to incorporate into everyday life. And to have the thought process that you're going to go to therapy, you're going to figure everything out, you're going to get fixed, so to speak, and then you're going to return back to previous life, right? Return back to what you were doing before you started treatment, is so far from the truth and so completely inaccurate. Unless, of course, you have the expectation that you're going to return back to old behaviors and you're okay with it. So it's very much about figuring out what works for you, practicing lifestyle change, and then implementing. So modifying your lifestyle and doing things, like I said, like with the desserts. I knew I couldn't forever not eat desserts. So it was about, okay, I need to figure out something that I can change in my lifestyle, which is cutting back on desserts, cutting back on sugar, cutting back on carbs, getting more sleep, reducing caffeine consumption, so things like that, to where I'm able to still do those things on a daily basis for a long term, and not suddenly go back to, oh, this is just too much work, I can't do it anymore. And I use the example also, I think, like for people that that are significantly overweight and they want to lose weight, and they go to a dietitian and they go to a trainer, and the dietitian says, okay, you know, these are the types of foods you need to be eating, and puts them on a meal plan. And the person goes to a trainer, and the trainer says, okay, this is the workout program I've created for you, and this is how you do the exercises, and now we're going to practice doing the exercises. That individual can't have the expectation that they're going to go through 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year of working with a dietitian and working with a trainer, achieve the body that they want, and then all of a sudden cut out the healthy eating and the working out cold turkey and go back to just sitting around on the couch all day eating like bags of cookies and potato chips.
Yeah.
It's the same exact concept with our brain.
Awesome. So you are a published author of the book Life is Tricky. And what has kind of been the response that you've been getting from people who have trichotillomania and they've read your book?
Oh, I am so appreciative of everybody that has found out about my book, has read my book, has reached out to me. It has been an overwhelmingly positive response from readers, family and friends included. It was interesting that, and I have the book right here, but it's backwards, obviously.
Life is tricky.
It was interesting that when my book was published and it was released, I sent an email out to family and to friends, to coworkers, to old professors, to classmates, to former relationships, friends from middle school, friends from high school, and I told everybody about the book. And it was the very, very first time, aside from my immediate family, that anybody else in my social network and in my inner circle, and that I knew personally, that knew about my struggles with skin picking and hair pulling and nail biting. So there was definitely a bit of risk involved, and I was definitely a little bit nervous about writing the book and then obviously releasing it and everybody finding out everything about me that I had worked so hard to keep a secret for so many years of my life. But with that being said, it has been an overwhelmingly positive response, and truthfully, I'm not even focused so much on that. My goal was to be an advocate and a voice for people that are struggling with trichotillomania and other BFRBs, because there is so much guilt, shame, and blame associated with the behavior, and the behavior is often done in isolation, and it's also very isolating to be struggling with something and not know very many other people that are going through it. So for me, if I even touched one person's life or impacted one person positively from writing the book, my job was done. That was my goal. That was all I wanted to do. And so from there, the fact that so many other people have read the book, parents and other clinicians, I have therapists that reach out to me and say, I've read your book and I'm using it to give me a little bit more guidance and direction as to how I'm, going to help one of my clients. So overall, it's just been incredibly positive, and I'm extremely appreciative of everybody that has been supportive and has written to me and has reached out for a variety of different reasons.
Yeah. So how did you feel? Did you feel so you're helping people and it's kind of drawing people into the book with me? I feel like we have so much in common. So it helps as, even throughout the years of my past to have that relation, that common ground with someone. But also, did you feel like free? Like, it just did something to where, the cat's out of the bag or whatever phrase, like, okay, this is it. It's public. There's no turning back. How is the release in that?
Yeah, Erin, you totally get me. You totally get me. That was exactly it. The writing process happened so easy and so smooth. I had no intention of writing a book. I never thought I'd be an author. That was not a goal of mine. But the words just came to me and everything just flowed out so easily that it was just so natural. It was just like I felt it was meant to be, right? That I needed to tell my story because it happened so easily. And once I did that, and once my book was published, it was extremely liberating. Yes, part of me was incredibly nervous. How are people going to respond to this? What are my friends going to think? What's my extended family going to think? Is anybody going to be upset that I hadn't told them sooner? Is anyone, going to feel that they were lied to in some way, that there was like this part of my life that they were unaware of? How is it going to affect my future with my career and knowing that I'm going to be working with patients and they're going to know so much about me and my personal life, which when we go to therapy, the therapists are supposed to remain fairly neutral and not share a lot about themselves and their background. So I had to consider all of these things. And so there definitely was a little bit of nervousness, but I think the overall feeling, thinking back, like reflecting, was definitely liberation and just like this sense of freedom that, oh my goodness, thank goodness I finally got my story out, because I had, like I said, for so long worked so hard to kind of compartmentalize it and stick it in a small box in the back corner of a dark room and hope nobody ever found it.
Yeah, it reminds me of the quick story that you told in your book. You were at a TLC conference and there was 40 kids. And tell us a little bit about that. It seems like it's the same relation. It's just freedom, like you're kind of set free and the restraints are kind of, taken off.
Yeah. Are you talking about the pool?
Yeah. That almost made me cry.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So at every TLC conference, you have for those that haven't been, you have a variety of ages that attend, and you have parents that are attending on behalf of their children or behalf of their teens, and some parents are with a child and some parents are there without their children. And then you have adults that are there and people of all ages. Grandparents show up. I've seen teachers. There's researchers there. There's other clinicians. So you have just this gamut of people that attend this conference. But the children, it's just so incredible to see the progression from the first day of the conference to the end of the conference. Is usually like 3 days, and just see how in the beginning they're all getting to know each other and introduce themselves for the first time, and then they bond over this commonality of, hey, you struggle with hair pulling, I struggle with hair pulling, like let's be friends, right? I've never met anybody else that's pulled their hair. I'm the only person I know that's pulled my hair out. So they bond over that, and there's that commonality. And I mean, that's why Stephanie and I, one of many reasons why we just had this like instant attraction and connection to one another. And it just, again, was so seamless, our friendship and how it evolved and started. But with these kids, so as the conference went on, you saw that they became more and more comfortable with each other. And then between workshops or between sessions, you'd see all the kids like together running from like room to room and hanging out at night. And it turned into like this big weekend, like sleepover party for them. And I think it was the last day of the conference. I'm thinking back several years now. I think it was the last day of the conference, or maybe the night before the last day. All of the kids, they took off their hair pieces, and they took off their bandanas, and they took off their hats, and they all jumped in the pool. And oh my gosh, it's just like, I'm like visualizing. I remember seeing it happen. And not only is it like super fun and freeing to just like go and cannonball into a pool and like, you know, the excitement of that, but it was just seeing, you know, the uncovering of what they had been hiding and what they felt so uncomfortable to show others for many years of their life. And just the comfort in each other, knowing that like, hey, I'm gonna totally like be completely free and raw and open and vulnerable right now. And I know nobody else is judging me because they're all in the same boat that I'm in. And that's what we all so badly want, you know, that human connection of like raw vulnerability, and just to really truly be ourselves and have people accept us for who we are.
Yeah. That's awesome. And we put a lot of I can'ts on it too, like Trichotillomania, but in all reality, we just have this kind of fear and the shame that covers over us.
Yeah.
So you have an offer for our viewers.
I do. I have an offer.
You do. It's exciting. Yeah. So we've been talking a lot about your book. So if you email Lindsey, you guys will actually get a personal signed copy with the purchase of the book. So that's pretty awesome. It's special, you know, like something to always keep in your home. So her email is lmullertherapy@gmail.com. That's LMULLER therapy@gmail.com. If you mention that you have watched this interview show, she will give you a signed copy. And so Lindsey, these last few minutes, I want you to share with someone who has trichotillomania an encouraging word for them to kind of press through this barrier and kind of give them hope, like something to hold on to as we are in closing.
Yeah, thank you. So, you know, I think that this isn't necessarily true for people just struggling with trich. I think this could be applicable for anybody struggling with anything in their life. And that is to love yourself unconditionally, no matter what it is that you're going through, and no matter how much change you want to make, and no matter how much you are so focused on the parts of yourself or the parts of your life that you don't like. I think that specifically with trich and skin picking and nail biting and anything that in some way tarnishes or damages our appearance and our image, which due to society seems to be very important these days, and in the grand scheme of life, it really isn't that important. I think it's so easy when we have trich to just focus so much on what we want to change and what we want to improve on, which is having our hair back or having our eyebrows back or having our eyelashes back. But the truth is that we need to really dig deep and find within ourselves the love and the self-compassion to love ourselves, even though we don't have a full head of hair. We can love ourselves even without hair, because hair is just one part of our appearance, and our appearance is just one part of who we are. And we are not defined by our hair. We are not defined by trich. Trich is a behavior that's happening in our life, just like sleeping, just like eating. Some behaviors are wanted, desirable, and positive. Other behaviors are not wanted and not desirable, and we want to get rid of them. But trich, hair pulling, is a behavior. It's not you. It's not who you are, and your hair is not you either. So you are lovable, and you can love yourself with a full head of hair, with eyebrows, without eyebrows, with eyelashes, without eyelashes. So I think that's the big takeaway.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Lindsey, for your time,
Erin,
and your expertise, and just so the image that you are portraying right now of success, and, you know, kind of accepting your imperfections, but not allowing it to consume your days anymore, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, awesome.
Thank you, Erin.
Well, thank you for being a part of this interview show, and we will, hopefully you'll get tons of emails.
I hope so.
For those copy signings, because that's pretty special. Thank you for offering that. All right.
Of course.
So thank you guys for being a part of TTM Overcomers Rising. I hope this has been an inspiration for you and an encouragement. Have a good day.